Good evening, everybody. This is September the 3rd for the Comanche Zoom. We're doing the one on the landing gear, what to do when the green light doesn't come on. Henry Spellman is going to be leading the discussion on that, but we have to have 2 or 3 other people coming in on it. At this point, we're free to go, so you can unmute and talk. What we usually do, what CJ always does, is ask you where you're from, who you are, and what you fly. So go ahead, click the mic and do it.
Well, I'll go first. Nick Wilson, Lubbock, Texas, in a 1965 Comanche 260.
Evening, Nicholas.
I'm
Herring.
Stephen Lasky in Littleton, Colorado with a 1959 Comanche 180.
Yeah.
Jim from Gordon, Colorado with the 67 Comanche 260B.
Hey, Terry.
Hi, it's Terry again. You've seen me before.
Yep.
Whiteman, California, or Whiteman in, Whiteman, which is in Los Angeles, California. A 1966 260B. Right now it's down because I'm having to do the annual, and as I've said before, figure out how to do the tail inspection.
Wow. Gordon, I think you tried to get in. You want to go?
Thanks, Pete. Gordy Herring, Ankeny, Iowa. I fly a 65 260.
Hi, I'm Bill Knapp. I fly a 260C. I've been flying it since 1975 until it was visited by Florence. Now it's in for service.
Yeah, Bill was the cause of a major adventure this past week, because we had to move his 260 up to Pennsylvania for a repair job, an annual on it. He got involved with the flooding in North Carolina a year ago, and because the water came up to the belly of the plane, there was all kinds of questions about whether it was corroded and all that kind of stuff. I think I got that right, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
And it took us about 4 days to put everything together and actually fly down, to get a hold of Bill, get the airplane, fly it up to Pennsylvania, and then get ourselves home. CJ and her father, Bernie Stump, did the heavy lifting on that one, and Bill was right involved in all part of it.
And the thing to remember, that's the Comanche spirit in practice.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Hi, I'm Bob Skalka. I show up as Matthew Valenzuela, my grandson. I ain't figured out how to change that yet. I fly a 67 260B out of Mesa, Arizona.
There should be a button somewhere that says rename.
I'm looking.
In the right corner.
It might also be called options, and then once you hit see options, one of them is rename.
Lou Pavesi, Carmel, California, and a 65 PA30.
Twinner, okay. That must be it, the picture of it behind you there.
Yeah, it's behind my head.
Yeah.
It's got a nice smile on it, a little tiny smile.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Phil Slack, Novato, California. I fly Comanche 250.
I suppose I should tell myself. I'm Pete Morris. I'm Danielson, Connecticut, and I also fly a 250. I have a 68 250. 63 250. It's 6'8" Papa, which is good. I got confused with, and it's relatively new to me. I had a 1960 250, the old style, and this new one has a working autopilot. I am thoroughly enamored of the working autopilot. I've never had one before.
Hi, everyone. My name is Trevor.
This is Mike Cosby, Las Vegas, Nevada, 62 250.
Hey, Trevor, give it a try again.
Hi, everyone. My name is Trevor. I have a 1964 Twin Comanche, doing a light restoration on it. Everything new, firewall forward, and I want to get into the landing gear and do work on the bushings, and thought this was appropriate to come and visit tonight.
Beautiful.
Hello, Doug Pickett, Romeo, Michigan, 64 250.
Margie Leggett. Margie Leggett, go ahead.
Tim Waggle, East Palestine, Ohio. fly out of 38 Delta, Salem Airport, 61 PA 24250. And I'm fortunate enough I can do all my own work. Thank you.
Margie Leggett. I fly out of Pasco, Washington, and I have a 1964 250.
And Margie, what's your N number?
November 8443 Papa.
8443, 8349. So close enough.
Ooh, close together, yeah.
Hi there, I'm Sue Folkringa from Pompano Beach, Florida. I fly a 250 5705 Papa.
Welcome to all of you.
Ernie James, Yucca Valley, California, at 65260.
Okay, we got dead mics here. Anybody else? Gee, jump in, who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
Hey everybody. Talked over you. Sorry, I'm Stephen Osborne here. I fly a Comanche 400, 8477 Papa.
Okay. All right.
And this is Lonnie, although it says my wife, Lauren Shear. I don't know how to change that. But just had my biannual yesterday with American Airlines Czech Airman. And he had me do a maneuver I've never done before, is put the my Comanche in a stall where he held the yoke completely still, and I had to keep it wing dropping from dropping with the rudder. I was quite busy. That was quite a interesting maneuver.
I see that Rob Leonard is on there. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm with the Bradley FAA safety team. I'm the program manager for airworthiness, and great that you guys are hosting these meetings to educate and share best practices and lessons learned. And I'm glad to be a part of this so that we can give you all wings credit for this this session that we're having tonight. We are trying to recruit CFI with at least 1,500 hours to become a FAA safety team rep. If any of you are interested and are qualified, we welcome your participation in that. That would enable all the meetings that you attend to count for wings credit. There we go. Get me online here. Does anybody have any questions about that? What qualifications are required? I'm an airworthiness guy. I'm not an ops person, so I'm not a pilot. So I'm more with the maintenance side of the house. But be glad to answer any questions that you have if anybody's interested in doing that. But anyway, great to be on board, and thanks for letting me join you guys.
Robert did a Comanche Zoom for us on the old autopilots, the ones that came with the Piper Comanches. And he spent many, many years working on them as a fountain of knowledge for the old autopilots and for the new ones. So if you have questions about autopilots, he's the guy to talk to.
What's his telephone number?
Yeah, Rob, maybe you can put that into the chat.
All right, I'll do that. I'll put it in the chat.
Yep, please do, because I have a plane that has all of those elements in it. And we upgraded the radios to Mark 12Bs, which stop all the.
I don't understand how you talk because I started and nobody listened to me.
No, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you, Alpha.
I did. It's down here in the corner. It says mute.
You're live.
Hey, Bill.
It says mute.
You were talking, Bill, about
unmute.
Now you're live again.
Hey, Bill. This is Rob again. You were saying that you replaced the Mark 12Bs with some other radios. Is that what you did?
Yeah, it was it came out in '69, used by New Haven Airways as a air taxi.
It's muted right now.
In it. When I upgraded the radio, that separated it from the autopilot.
So I'll just ask if you can hear me.
And I'm just wondering how difficult it would be to connect those to the old autopilot. All the servos are there. All the wires that should have been taken out are still there.
Okay. Well, we could talk about that in detail. Maybe I'm like I said, I'm going to list my phone number on there. Give me a call. I'd be glad to talk to you about it.
I will appreciate that, Rod, because the plane is at a status now that I would like to see that. And the only alternative I have is to put the auto controller 3 on there and use that hold on course.
Right now, Bill's plane is at Going Aviation in Reedsville, Pennsylvania, for its major inspection of his landing gear and some I believe the annual too. Is that right, Bill?
And several other little not to be mentioned items.
All righty. Key the mic. Who are you? Where are you? What do you fly?
Hey, good evening, guys. This is Keith Steiner in Tampa with 9321 Papa. It's still in Zephyr Hills. She went in for paint stripping this week. But I have a question for all those that have had these airplanes a lot longer than I have. It's completely gutted, and I'm looking at making molds of the dog bowl, the column, because I've got it's a 69 260C, so the column where the throttle and manifold pressure and mixture are, and then the little plastic piece that goes around the rudder control. So those are all cosmetic, but I want to make those out of mold those and make them out of carbon fiber. Has anybody ever done that, or is there any problems with doing that because of those components in the airplane? Over.
This is John. I don't have any personal experience with making them out of fiber, but a company called Plain Plastic, used to be called McKinsey. They have the standard plastic. So look around there. But as far as manufacturing your own carbon, I have no knowledge of that one.
No, that wasn't my question, John. I'm going to make it. I can do that with carbon fiber. So I've already made the molds. So my question is there any legal issue with making those components out of carbon fiber versus plastic? I don't think there is, but that's why I'm asking the form.
No idea.
That's actually kind of a tough one. I would say the trim piece, what you would call trim pieces, as long as you're using a material that is meets the FARs and can demonstrate that it meets the FARs for flammability, you're probably okay. But you're doing two things on there that have indicators on them, the fuel bowl and the trim. And I don't know where you're at when you start doing things that have, indicators or instructions on them. If it's just a trim piece, yeah, any trim shop can do trim as long as it's certified material.
Right. Yeah. And the labels will be made out of metal the same. Well, actually, the one on the rudder will be reused because it screws on. The ones that are on the dog bowl, I'm going to have to remake, but they'll look just exactly the same, and they're going to be made out of aluminum. Over.
Yeah, just make sure that the placards match your limitation section in your POH, that everything's exactly the same, worded exactly the same.
Yeah, they'll
And
be the same.
And like the other gentleman said about flammability checks, that's the area that's questionable. You know, I'm not sure with the carbon fire. I mean, you've got plastic on there now, so, you know, but that is the issue. Is
There are flame retardant resins available. You can make them that will meet the FAR, but you got to demonstrate that.
Yeah. Well, the MSDS that comes with the resin I'm using is a boat marine resin. It actually has flammable because it's made for boats, so it's got anti-flammable paragraphs. But thanks. That's a good point. I'll have to do my research on that. But look forward to seeing some carbon fiber parts out there for those pieces. Over.
Are you able to make the little gaspers there at the side? Are you able to manufacture those?
Talking about that hold the air vents?
Yes.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I could make those too.
Wow. Okay. Fabulous.
But there is a rule about owner manufactured parts, and if you find that rule and comply with it, you know, then you ought to be okay. And Matt Kirk rebuilt my gear motor, and he basically said, "Hey, this is since I'm doing this sort of off the cuff, and with the specs I have, I'm going to send you a piece of paper," meaning send me a piece of paper saying you approve this, you know, field manufactured, field supported part, and that sort of gets him off the hook and sort of makes it legal. So if you find the owner performed or the owner manufactured parts regulation and you comply with that, there's no problem.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
We did a Comanche Zoom on owner provided parts, and you might find some information in there too.
And where do I find all those old Zoom recordings? Are they on the Comanche site?
Yes, they are. You go to ComancheZoom.org and click on the Comanche Zoom page, which is like the second one over from the left for links. And on that page is a list at the top of the future Comanche things, and toward the bottom of it is a list of all the recordings. On the right-hand edge of that list is a link to go to the recordings.
Okay.
In fact, I can show you that stuff pretty easily. Hang on here.
And if you subscribe to the Piper Flyer magazine, Kristen Winter has written a pretty expansive article on how to comply with those owner manufactured parts regulations.
I've actually read that article now that you say that.
Oh, here we go. I think right now I'm going to show our help needed PowerPoint. This is the stuff that we have been trying to get help to, you know, for people in the Comanche world. The Comanche Get Acquainted program is what Bill referred to when he was talking about this trip that he had with his plane to get it to Pennsylvania. It took a boatload of people to get that to happen. The Piper Museum is looking for a tenant. They need to have someone in their empty office area to help pay for the rent. And then Swap Meet, we're looking for a coordinator. Right now, Les Thomas is kind of doing it, but we're going to try and do that as part of our Comanche Zoom stuff. Here's the Wings credit stuff to register. northeastcomanche.org. That's also where you're going to find the next page, which is the Comanche Zoom page. And then there is a registration form link right there on that page. Put in your name, your phone, and the email. The other things are optional. And then click the check the box for credit and then send it. But if you do that, you're going to also need to be on your email account when you get onto the Zoom thing so that we can link up the two things. your registration and your name. And then Comanche Docs Online is a project that's being done to get all kinds of stuff. And he's looking for more stuff. He wants more things relating to the twins particularly, and also any old original type handbooks. This was old news, but there was a fantastic article about the wasps during World War II. It's just posted on the Piper Museum website. We'd like to do some fundraising perhaps, and there's a challenge. Many of you asked if you donate. I still don't have a way of actually handling your money, so we can't quite do that. But if you write a check and send it to our treasurer, that will probably work. It's up to you, no problem. Some of the possibilities are here. Help to defray some of the Comanche Zoom costs. We're working on making Comanche parts or finding ways of making Comanche parts, including welding and machining and owner-produced parts, which is one of those topics. There's also a collection of 337s. The neat thing about them is if you have the same model aircraft and there is a 337 for something, you can add your N number to it. You don't have to get your own 337 approved. And then the Piper Aviation Museum support. There's a possibility of paying for a brick in the wall, or you could donate directly, or you can support the thing like with the family membership and stuff like that. So that's the end of that. That's the end of that sales pitch.
Well done.
So forth. Here we are. Oh, good afternoon, sir. Good evening. How you doing?
I'm on Zoom here.
I'm sorry, we won't disturb you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll assume that we might know the FBO, and we would say, oh, hey, look, there's our phone. Search.
So go ahead. Say who you are, where you are, and what you're from, what you fly.
Okay,
Afternoon.
I'll reintroduce Pat Kiefer from Fort Worth, Texas area. Fly a 1970 PA-39. I'm the second generation owner, and I logged my first hour of PIC time 48 3/4 years ago. Don't shake your head like that, Pete. Yes, I know I'm getting old.
Pat, this is.
It's not that you're old.
I
It's
thought
just
you
that
were only about 24 now.
I'm not
Thank you,
shaking my
Hank.
head about you're that old or anything like that. It's just that you've been flying for that long a time. I'm that old. I haven't been flying that long.
In that same serial numbered aircraft, although there is not a lot of the original parts left, I'll tell you that, the skin, but everything else has changed at least once.
Okay, Kia, who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
Afternoon, Andy White calling from Covelo, California, fly a 61-180.
Chris from Houston, Texas. I got a 1960 PA-24-250.
Hey everybody, I'm John Dunning. I am in Stowe, Mass. November 8962 Papa, 66-260B.
I'm Ray Fay from Madison, Wisconsin. Got a 260B model that I've been flying about 15 years. And prior to that, I had a airplane that I flew for 30 years, Comanche, a 250. I love the airplane and all the people that fly them.
Cool.
Don Pitts, Lovington, New Mexico. I got a 1966 260B.
Welcome. Welcome. I see Jim Peters is on. He's from Australia, down under.
I'm Steve Ells. I live in Paso Robles, California. Fly a 1960 PA-24-180. Low time airframe, and I've almost got all the mechanical stuff put back together. And I'm almost finished with the re-interior. I'll probably talking about that for a couple more months, but I'm working on it. I love my Comanche.
Don't we all?
Russell Phillip from Perth, Western Australia. Got a 30C model that's about 2 weeks away from finishing a 3-year resurrection after a landing accident.
Murray Collette from New Hampshire. First time caller, no, just kidding. 1959 Comanche 250 that has a lot of replacement parts and a few original ones.
Phil King from near Kansas City, flying 1960 PA-24-250.
Where at near Kansas City? Just curious.
Stillwell, Kansas. Actually, we fly out of Olathe.
Oh, okay.
OJC.
I'm based out of Forbes in Topeka. It's not far from
Okay. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Tom Jackson. I fly a 64 Twin Comanche based out of Eureka, California. And behind me is a 46 Funk that I have as well. So good to see everyone.
Hey, Pete, this is Lonnie. In my 1960 180, I do not have GPS, but I know our airport is struggling with their ILS, which is 30 years old. Parts are no longer available for it, and they're trying to decide whether to maintain or try to maintain this ancient ILS or get rid of it. So I'm wondering maybe a future meeting with somebody from the FAA that's knowledgeable. What's the future of ILS? Anyway, that's it.
Hank Spellman in Lincoln, Illinois, to respond to your problem. I spent an hour at the airport at a meeting because they're taking away our NDB approach. They're taking away our VOR approach. And all we're going to have left is the stuff that the military turns off when you need it most. Besides that, they're growing huge, humongously tall wind farms all the way around the airport.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, but I hate to see ILS is going away. It may happen at my airport, and then I'm going to be out of luck.
Exactly.
Hi, Ed Cullen from South Lake, Texas, Comanche 250, 1961. Looking forward to the show tonight.
I'm Doug Linville from Gravois Mills, Missouri. I have a 1961 250.
I'm Mark
And this
Sullivan.
You go, Mark.
Mark Sullivan, Camarillo, California. I've got a 66 PA-30B. A turbo PA-30B.
Who was it that called in from South Lake, Texas? I'm in Trophy Club.
That was Ed Cullen, and I keep my airplane at Hicks.
Ah, Northwest Regional.
Northwest, no, oh, right across the street.
There you go.
There you go.
And this is CJ, normally in Vermont, currently learning to fly something that's not a Comanche, but usually flying either a 180 or a 260B. Welcome all.
Okay, I just muted everybody. This is time to start the presentation. Hank Spellman is there, and he's going to lead a discussion on what to do when the green light doesn't come on. It's based on a couple of different things we have dug up. One by Maurice Taylor about options, well, not that, approaches to trying to get it to work. Hank has been a strong Comanche person for a long time and has got some experience with gear problems, as some of us others do also, and we'll all chip in. Anybody who has comments or anything like that, I don't know if you want to interrupt them too much, but there may be an opportunity for comments, so we'll go on with that. And of course, questions at the end. So at this point, what I suggest everybody do is go up there in the upper right-hand corner and click on speaker view so that you will see whoever is talking. And Hank, are you ready to go with the with your share stuff? You got to unmute, Hank.
Okay, yes, I'm ready to go. I believe I saw our friend from California, the twin Comanche, the speediest twin Comanche in the world, Guru. And if I did, I hope he feels free to jump in and correct me anytime I make a mistake. He knows a lot more about it than I am. A little bit about my background. I'm a private pilot with instrument rating. Have never flown a twin except once when somebody else was showing me what it was all about. And I have learned many of these lessons the hard way, because some of them happened to me, not for many, many years, and none of them were the airplane's fault. So driving right in, we have how do I make this thing come up, Pete? Like that?
You click on the share screen, you should be able to see what you want. Click on that and then click share.
Okay. Share screen.
Green box.
Green box.
There it is.
Oh, you can see it and I can't. Okay. Okay, now I can see it. In the mid-'80s, Maurice Taylor and P.K. Roberts wrote Comanche Abnormal Gear Operation in the form of a checklist. Remember, this was made in the mid-'80s when Comanches were a lot more standard than they are now. We'll go through this checklist and hit some of the high points. But Maurice Taylor was the guru that the other Comanche gurus went to for the final word. He is long departed, but he was a gentleman of the first magnitude and just a massive mind and probably one of the gentlest, wonderful souls I've ever met. So here is the Comanche Abnormal Gear list. There's some caveats here. This is not approved anywhere. This is the summation of the Comanche gurus' experience up to the mid-'80s. It has not been modified since then, and it has probably been totally forgotten by almost everyone. So let's start with the procedure. if we look at the last paragraph before the procedure itself starts, right here, this checklist assumes that your transmission has been painted with red alignment stripes. A lot of people don't know about alignment stripes. Other people do, but know incorrectly. Let's look at the pictures. That's not what I want. That's not what I want. That's what I want. This is what your box looks like if you have an earlier Comanche, the gear operation.
You got to share it.
What?
I think you got to share it first.
Oh, I got to share it every time. Okay.
Correct. So you have to stop what you're doing and share the next one.
Oh, all right. Stop share. Okay, I got that. Where'd this thing go? I'll get this. I didn't have a chance to practice much last night.
I can share it if you'd like.
Okay.
All right.
That'd be fine. All right, here we are. This is the landing gear, the old style, with the collapsible extension arm, showing it in the down position. Now, one thing I want you to look at, and that is your seat is up near the top of the picture. When you look down, you cannot see the topmost connection to the push rod right there. If it's night, you won't see anything. So you need a flashlight. However, you're going to have one hand on the yoke flying, and you're going to have the other hand on the flashlight looking down there to see what you're going to do. You're going to need a third hand and perhaps even a fourth hand to get most anything done. So what I suggest is the next time you have your airplane in the shop and apart, that somewhere down on near the bottom of the hole, which you see along that around in there, put a little light bulb. We've got modern light bulbs now that put out a lot of light and virtually no heat. You'll be able to see what's going on down there. The next thing is to consider is we talk about the red stripes. Some people put the red stripes on the bottom, paint them on the bottom on the chromate underneath there. That's very nice, except you can't line them up. They could be lined up, but there's so much parallax between the top, between the mark on the moving members and the floor that you really don't know if they're lined up or not. Therefore, put the mark right across there. Repeat showing it. That's going to show that it's lined up. When I had mine done, the mechanic that did it lined it up on the bottom. I've never been able to use it. It's going to get fixed the next time we're down there. Okay, let's go back to the, Pete, let's go back to the checklist.
Okay, I can do that.
What's the point of the stripe?
To tell that it's down and to the point where it's locked. The next thing we're going to do is lose the green light. And that's the only way you can tell it's all the way forward. I think it's, yes, that's the one. Okay. According to Maurice, going down here, do not recycle the landing gear. Move the gear switch to off and then down at least twice. If green light obtained or any time hereafter, proceed with a normal landing. You've done everything you can do. But what if you have a gear switch like I have, which is either up or down? There's no off on my airplane. I flew a 63 250 many years ago, and it had a center off position. So what can you do to perform this test? Well, one thing you can do is kill your master switch. That kills all the electricity. The object of this test is there's a possibility that the internal workings of the gear switch has reached its life limit and isn't working correctly, but they seldom fail totally all at one point. It could be that if you switched that gear switch up and down several times, when you go back and turn the master switch on or move it to the down position, it'll make connection and everything will work. It's not much of a chance, but it's an easy first fix. Okay, next you remove the transmission cover. You inspect the transmission for security and blockage, expect for broken gear components, and check for the gear alignment stripes. If the gear alignment stripes line up, you're as good as you're going to be. Okay, then you fix what you find wrong. If their gear components are broken, or particularly if one gear is inoperable, you've got other problems and you're not ready to land just yet. If you're somewhere, normally when your gear doesn't work, you're right near an airport because you're planning on landing. If you have ATC coverage, get their help. You don't have to declare an emergency yet, but it would be real nice to let them know that you're in trouble, and also to request that they monitor your position in regard to other traffic, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with your head inside the cockpit. And having been through this twice, I am aware that even with two pilots, one of them has to be instructed to drive and the other one has to be instructed to fiddle. And the driver doesn't fiddle and the fiddler doesn't drive. Any questions on that? I bring you back to the, I believe it was an L-1011 that went into the Everglades a number of years back. Everybody in the cockpit was working the problem and nobody was flying the airplane. The next step, although it's not on here, is to just stop and think and calm down. And think, what could possibly be doing this, which is just dirt simple. My wife and I and another couple who happened to be a pilot went to Decatur, Illinois, which is just about 40 miles away, for dinner, had a nice dinner, came back. It was raining, of course, and we shot the VOR approach into my home airport. It happened to be a circling approach in the rain, although the visibility was pretty good. But as soon as we had hit the final approach fix and I put gear down, something wasn't right. And what wasn't right was I wasn't getting any descent. It took a while to seep through my brain that we didn't have any gear yet. And I was not yet to the point where I checked for gear extended light. And I thought, what could it possibly be? Unconsciously, I put my hand down to the Johnson bar, slid it back, and discovered that the Johnson bar was being held up off the floor by a purse. One of the backseat passengers, I don't know if it was my wife or the other wife, saw a nice blank spot to put her purse as we were taking off. Of course, being dark, I couldn't see down there because it's blacker than a black cat in a coal mine in midnight. What had happened was that the gear breaker had popped when we retracted gears, the gear when we took off, and the gear was so close to up that it didn't affect the flying characteristics at all. I told my friend, who is a 10,000 hour airline pilot and also an instructor pilot, that he was flying. I knew what was wrong to continue the approach because I'd have it fixed in 15 seconds. And I did have. I ran my fingers over the breakers, found the right one, pushed it in, and the gear came down and we got a green light. Then I took over again because it was my airplane and made a decent landing. I stopped for just a second to think what could possibly be wrong. And it's usually the simple stuff that you overlook. There's also a question of what can we do about the green light, because just a little bit further down in the procedure, we're going to check and see if the green light goes on. Pete, I need, I don't think you have it. Let me get it.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for something I downloaded today.
All right, if you're going to share that, I'll have to stop sharing this temporarily.
That's okay. We can come back to it. Just leave it there.
Okay.
You need to stop sharing.
Oh, done.
Okay. And now I gotta, there's my share right there. And I want, well, I don't know where that thing went. I had it up just a minute ago. Oh, it's probably buried over in my other. There it is. I'm sorry, folks. I had this all set up and then I hit the wrong switch and it all disappeared.
You want to go back to the other one?
No, because I don't think you've got it.
Yeah, I'd like a taste of that.
Ah, here we have it. Okay, this is going to work much better now. What we have here is an advertisement from our friend at Comanche Gear. Comanche Gear sells a couple of things that are real neat. And these two are a special setup that he sells. And this happens to be for the gear selector that does not have a center
Can't see the,
Yeah, I
can't
need
see
to
it right now.
You can't see it?
click the green, click is what you want to share, and then click share.
Yeah, I did it backwards. There's something somewhere. I got so much stuff up here now, I'm having trouble. Oh, you guys are looking right here and seeing the whole thing. All right. This is going to make it better. Get you here. That's the one. The problem is the one I've got, the one I want is.
Hank, I do have it if you want me to put it up.
Okay. Yeah, do it. I got to find the stop share, wherever that is. There. Okay, you did it. All right. Press to test dimmable indicator lights. These are things that the military's been using for years and years and years. They are press to test, although this picture shows the bottom one does not have a press to test, but the one I bought did. Okay, and the top has a press to test. So, and they are also dimmable. So you don't have to fool around with anything. You just press them to turn them on. And if they don't go on when they are pressed, you got a bum light. The procedure that was written by Maurice Taylor said to test the bulb, take the yellow bulb out and the green bulb out and switch them and see what happens. Well, my airplane was originally a 1959. It had a cover on it that covered up some of the light. So what you would have to do would take the panel cover off so you could get to the light bulbs. They were still pretty small, and I've got fat fingers. I've never been able to get one of them out. Basically, think about doing that at night also, and flying the airplane and trying to pull out small screws with a screwdriver that you have to find somewhere. And basically, you've got a process that sounds real good on paper and doesn't work very well in real life. I heartily recommend these. The three position switch, I believe, or setup is, I believe, $190, and the two position is $120 or $150, somewhere in there. It's really pretty cheap for what you get. Okay, can we go back to the abnormal gear operation?
You can do that.
All right.
I think.
Well, I'm going to try it.
There we go.
There we go. All right. Okay. Then, skipping over a little bit, if things are, the marks are still lined up and the gear is at full travel according to the marks, you can just move on, and eventually there's nothing particularly exciting in here. You can read it and understand it. Check that the breakers are reset, and they should be if you've got a green light. and go ahead and land. You've done everything you can. Short of climbing out on the wing with a wrench and while somebody else flies the airplane and trying to fix the gear, which I do not recommend, you've done everything. You can also fly by the tower and have them inspect. This is real good in the movies, and it's real good in good life, but the tower isn't going to tell you anything other than that they appear to be down. The tower doesn't know. It's the last eighth to a quarter of an inch of movement that determines whether you're over centered. We have a picture that I took. Could I have it back for a minute?
Sure.
Okay, and I want this and this and share screen. Okay, this of course is my lovely airplane.
You don't see it. We don't see it yet.
We don't see it yet. Okay.
Click share screen, click what you want to share, and then click share.
Oh, okay. Want to share, and then click share. You see it? You don't see it yet.
No, you gotta select. You select what you want to share, and then share it.
How do I stop share?
You're done. The sharing is not going on right now.
Okay.
So click the green share screen. Then click whatever you want us to see. Highlight it. And click share down the lower right.
You getting it now?
Nope.
Oh, rat. You haven't got this bad. Okay, I've got it highlighted.
Then you should be a button that says share.
You're talking about the green share under your beard?
Maybe.
I've got two screens. That's probably what's screwing me up. Share, Alt S.
Oh, maybe we better just go on, huh?
Just a minute. This is kind of important.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I see what's the problem. Share.
There we're going.
Now we're going. All right. This happens to be a picture that somebody else took when I was landing at Oshkosh a few years ago. Are the gear down and locked?
They look like it.
They appear to be down.
Well, they are. But if the nose gear were back just a little bit, they wouldn't be. So little that you couldn't tell it in this photograph. The tower can't tell you if they're down and locked. All they'll ever say is they appear to be down. Now, if the nose gear were back, back maybe half the width of the white hub on the nose gear, they would probably still say they look down because they don't know what the gear looked like, the nose gear looks like when it's down and locked on a Comanche. And there's nothing they can relate it to. I think I made my point.
Yep.
You just can't tell. So the tower is going to give you the best of their knowledge, but it's not for anything certain. That's why they hedge their words. Okay. No, we can stop sharing that. And my stop share moved.
It should be a red bar somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Okay, now I can bring back the other thing.
That'll be fine.
I hope. There you go.
Okay.
Where do you want me, what number should we be on here, Hank?
Oh, we should be down somewhere around, go on past that. If the gear, okay, keep on going. It's telling you how to reset the breakers and things like that. It's pretty self-explanatory. Had some dental work today, among other things. Okay, let's go to the manual gear extension. That is the last resort. Maintain 1.3 V S. Landing gear switch off. Pull up, take up the transmission cover and pull the motor release arm up and forward through full travel. For the later models, you have to unstow the lever and also stow it into the mechanism to be able to operate the mechanism. If unable to extend, push the handle forward with all available force. Use foot and leg pressure. Bend handle if necessary. You're getting down to where the rubber meets the road, and you're getting close to having a real bad day. If the gear extend but no green light, conduct the gear warning circuitry of the first section. If unable after the green light, request the tower visual inspection for whatever good that does. If all appears down and both rod end stripes are full travel, proceed with the landing. Avoid crosswinds. Hold the extension handle firmly forward with your foot to prevent possible collapse on landing roll. Don't. There's mechanical advantage in the gear. If it starts to go, you're just going to break your foot or your leg. I have never heard of a case where that worked. You can do it if you want to. I wouldn't. My legs are getting old enough and brittle enough that I can't stand any more trauma on them. Okay.
If when you are holding that lever, up against the nose tunnel, you are exerting pressure on the conduits, and that hopefully will hold it over center if it is in fact over center. If it just decides to go off of over center, then yeah, you're right. You haven't got a prayer. It's going to go down. But by holding that pressure, you might just keep it over center.
Yeah, and it's going to go down with a bang.
Yep.
Even a basketball player in a top form wouldn't be able to get out of the way. But you can do this. Also, in the later models, they have a safety lock that's installed. I have seen a number of pictures of what the safety lock does in a gear collapse. And all it does is make more things for you to fix, because the safety lock won't hold the gear up if it's not over centered. Okay, gear up landings. Oh, there's one other thing I forgot to say. When you are pushing the gear down manually, you are working against the airspeed of the airplane because the nose gear has to go forward. You need to stay above stall. I've had some discussions with some of the other people that I respect. They say not to slow the airplane down because there are a lot of people who haven't checked their airspeed indicator against the stall speed in decades. And so the airspeed indicator may not be very accurate down in that range. I've checked mine. I would be willing to go down to 10 miles an hour above above stall. I've done it many times for practice. But you've got to know where the stall is, and you certainly want to do this at an altitude that gives you time to recover from an inadvertent stall. Okay. Gear up landing. Declare an emergency.
Hank, maybe at this point you want to mention your caveat of never doing this as part of a flight review.
Oh, yes. When I was checking out in my second lifetime as a Comanche flyer, my check airman said, well, now we're going to do a emergency gear extension, and we are going to and land. And I said, no, we're not. And he said, then I can't sign you off. And I said, that is entirely your prerogative, but it's my airplane and we're not going to do it. And he said, why? By this time we were turning base. And I said, I don't have time to discuss it right now. We will discuss it on the ground, but we're not going to do it. That shut him up and let me concentrate on landing. We got in and stopped. And he said, okay, what's going on? And I said, are you aware that when you do this, you are left to only one safety feature holding the gear up, and that is over the center. And if it's not over the center, if there is anything at all wrong with your gear, they're going to collapse. And even if everything is fine, you got to find jacks to jack the thing up to reconnect the mechanism. He said, I didn't know that. And I said, do you know where the closest jacks that will work are? And he said, no. I said, in Springfield. That's 30 miles away. And it's going to take us all day to get this done. I'm not going to do it. He said, I didn't know that. One of the things I mentioned to new Comanche owners when they are out looking for a flight instructor to teach them how to fly a Comanche. Of course, Comanches fly like every other airplane. Everybody knows that. Ask them how many strokes does it take for emergency gear extension. And I've heard anywhere from 7 to 15 to 25. And the answer is 1/2. You push it forward all the way and leave it. I wouldn't really want to get Comanche instruction from somebody that didn't know that. Because it appears to me they don't know one of the most basic points about a Comanche in emergency situations.
Yeah, the bottom line is if you're flying and you do an emergency gear extension, that is the only option you have is to land. There is no other option. You cannot reset it.
You can, but it takes two people, both of whom know what they're doing. Maurice Taylor told me he used to do it all the time, but I am nowhere near as good to as Maurice on this stuff.
Go back with the caveat there. Don't do this at home.
Yeah. Okay, for the gear up landing, we need to roll down a little bit. Declare an emergency. Long runway and emergency equipment. You realize now that you have declared an emergency, you can do almost anything you need to do without getting into trouble. We've got here again, have tower confirm the gear positions. In this case, it means which gear is appears to be down and which gear appears to be up, because there are conditions where the Comanche gear can have some up and some down. What that means is something is mechanically broken in the system, and there is not a thing you can do about it. And I think you can go through the rest of these and read it, because they're really pretty simple. You hold it off as long as you possible, and you slow down, you turn off the gas, and things that you would normally do for an emergency extension. One main gear down and one up, you probably got the worst of all worlds, because once you get on the ground, you're not going to be able, you're probably going to be along for the ride. And then have the passengers exit as rapidly as possible. Let me check and make sure I have not missed anything. That takes care of everything as far as I can see. I'll be happy to attempt to answer any questions. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know.
I've got a couple of pictures that I can share to illustrate some of these things.
Please do.
This is my conduits after I had one gear collapse. The upper one was the left-hand conduit. And as you can see on the left side over here, this is the tube that is fixed under the wing coming out from the fuselage. This one is supposed to extend like this one, and it didn't. This is the cable that pushes the gear out, and that's why it didn't lock. So, you know, that was a situation. There was so much crud on this thing that the tube jammed inside the outer tube and just plain didn't come out. So at 10 o'clock in the night on a January, landing at my home airport with an instructor beside me, the gear was down and almost locked. The plane wiggled a little bit on the runway and it collapsed. And I ended up riding one tip and the rest of the wheels off to the side and had to get rescued. So that's one of them.
You're saying the top one is the bad one?
Yes, I'll show it again. I think, yeah, there we go. Yeah, the top one, you see here, this is the outer tube and the inner tube of the conduit, and the cable is inside there pushing. That's what keeps it straight. Here, the outer tube is fine, but the inner tube did not move out. Didn't come out like this one. So the cable itself is exposed and of course is flexible. And it was enough force, you know, of the wheel being down and the aerodynamic and all that kind of stuff to hold the gear out where it belonged, but it did not lock over center. And so because it was flexible like that, it decided to collapse. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, thank you. That's for showing that again. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Pete, do you have green lights when that happened?
I had green lights. Both of us, my instructor and I both verified green lights. And, you know, that it was green until we wiggled on the runway.
And Pete, how long had it been since they were serviced to whatever extent that they can be serviced? Obviously annually is a visual inspection, but I mean, you know, how often should you look to replace these things?
I don't know if you need to replace them, and this is my own opinion. But what I have been doing since that time is paying attention to that. You know, of course, when the gear is down, those tubes are exposed. I've been paying attention to that one that slides in and out to be sure that it's not full of crud. That can also get filled up with ice and slush and things like that if you're running on a wet, cold runway, which would be a problem when you're trying to raise the gear because it's trying to contract, trying to go inside. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. What I did, of course, with that one, the insurance helped me pay for it, so I could replace the conduits. I used the Webco ones, which have Teflon linings, makes them a much more resistant to that crud kind of stuff, and I didn't have any problem with that. But the those were probably the original conduits in my 1960 Comanche, and that would have happened, I think it was 2007 when that gear collapse happened. So that had a lot of age on them. I don't know what, and if any maintenance was done, because I did no particular maintenance on them. I just ran the gear.
My understanding is that there is no lubrication allowed, or perhaps a very specific lubrication, but there's plenty of evidence that over the years, mechanics have just shot it full of anything that was slippery that was handy. Not Pete's in particular, but just generally. So it's something you have to watch, because once it's in there, you can't get it out.
And I have another one here I could share. Oh, shoot, I just killed it. This was an article that was in the Nor'easter about a landing that I had here where the gear was not all the way down and not locked. This on the left is how I ended up on the side of the runway with the gear folded underneath. This is the conduit. This is the conduit. It was not quite over center. And when I landed, well, it may have been almost over center, but when I landed, both conduits did this. They acted like springs and bent. And then very gently, the gear folded up underneath the wings. I got it on the belly. I heard the skidding and I heard the prop strike. And that was the end of that particular Comanche. But that's, again, I had 3 green lights. Everything was cool. And it was not over center.
I could make a couple of comments about that.
Okay.
All right. If the gear is over center and balanced, it will not collapse. There's tremendous amount of time and effort that's required to make sure that all 3 legs of the gear are in fact synchronized. And boy, there's no doubt about it, the manual for doing that will leave many trained and experienced IAs off in the weeds. But if the gear is in fact over center, the only thing that will cause it to collapse will in fact be the eye bolt or some other mechanical thing in the drag link breaking. And I'm not criticizing, that's just the facts. And I'm imploring everybody to make sure that your mechanic seeks counsel from an experienced mechanic organization. I'm fortunate enough to work with a guy that's 91 years old that was at Piper the day the prototype flew, and is actually kind of a marvel on this thing. And I've worked rigging many gear, and I've seen many gear come into the shop, and many of them, the mechanic has clearly attempted to try to optimize the force on the drag links such that you can't push them back up. The trouble with that is that once one of the drag links is absolutely solid against itself, there's no way the others can move effectively. And so you need to time it so that they all go over center at the same time, not just continue to add extension until they're all in a bound situation. That's just a small recommendation. I've seen it many, many times. And if the gear collapses and there is not a broken eye bolt or a pivot bolt or the actual linkage itself, then the gear just simply wasn't over center and wasn't adjusted correctly.
One thing I've done since that time when I do the annuals and check the gear, you know, I'm sitting in the plane, you know, running the gear up and down so the mechanic can see what's going on. And what I've been doing is as soon as, when I'm putting the gear down, as soon as I see the green light, I stop the gear. And the mechanic then looks to see, is it really in fact over center? And
Yeah.
so far it has been. Then I continue running the gear and it hardly, it doesn't move. I mean, it's a little, and that's about it. It's done.
I can suggest another technique for that that's very easy. Disconnect the gear while it's on the jacks and lower the gear very, very slowly. And on the drag link for one side, put your hand at the over center, where the drag link meets the triangular arm, that pivot point that you're trying to get over center, and hold up with about 5 pounds as the person in the plane takes the gear down that last 1/4 inch. And if you hold up with about 4 or 5 pounds, what you should find out is that you will hear the other 2 switches click microscopically before the switch that you're holding against. And if you go and do that on each gear, and then if you don't do that on each drag link individually, when you're done, what you find out is that the 3 switches are timed to each other, and that over center is occurring essentially simultaneously. And when I'm talking about extending the gear slowly, I'm talking about degree per second kind of very, very slow creep. When you allow the gear to finally be in that lower position, you should, in fact, without applying any forward force, get a little bit of movement in the link. I'm talking the very slightest in all the links. The nose gear push rod should be able to be rotated back and forth with your finger slightly. And then if you ask the person with the emergency extension lever to apply about 5 pounds of force on the extension lever, you will no longer be able to rotate that nose gear link because it will now be tight, and the landing gear legs themselves will be immovable. And if you do that, they are all hitting over center simultaneously.
Bingo.
Doug, thank you so much for saying that. This is CJ. I just completed the 1,000-hour gear AD in a 180, and I've spoken with Matt Kirk and Hans Newbert, and everybody, if you can go back and just replay what Doug just said and bring it to your A&Ps, we may save some airframes. So I just wanted to sort of really reiterate the importance of getting everything timed to be the same, because the gear is ridiculously strong if it's correctly rigged.
Yeah. The gentleman that I'm fortunate enough to work with is Clark Putman. He's been a practicing IA for 74 years. He's absolutely amazing. And I've now had the joy of doing 4,000-hour inspections with him and many gear checks on other Comanches that weren't 1,000-hour inspections. It's not complicated, but it is precise, and there's a way to do it, and there's a way to get yourself in a real trouble.
I like to share that my gear was not at the very end of the retraction. It was breaking the circuit. So I took my AMP said that the conduits were crudded up. And what he did is, I didn't see him do it, but he took a car brake master cylinder and somehow ran and forced fluid through the conduits to clean all the gunk out. And right now it's working perfectly. You know, Hank, I understand you said there's no approved procedure for that, but all I know is that my gear right now retracts perfectly. Before it did not. And my AMP said it was because he ran the fluid through there you have to force it somehow. And he used a brake master cylinder. Maybe some comments about that.
I am not a mechanic and I don't pretend to be one. I would defer to almost anyone else with experience, although I have looked at some landing gear at various fly-ins, get in my back and crawl under and snoop around, and I am just appalled at what I see. They obviously, sometime in their past, they have been through a series of mechanics that probably not only did not have the maintenance manual, probably didn't even wouldn't read it if they did. You know, they all fly the same. We're going to do an emergency gear extension and land. You know, that kind of attitude. And CJ at one of her fly-ins a while back went down and inspected all the planes on the line, and they found stuff you didn't have to be a mechanic to see. It was crazy. Parts on upside down. Landing gear parts on upside down.
Yeah, I've got that. Hang on, sure.
Oh, okay.
If you don't mind, I'd like to address Lauren's comment about the lubricating that conduit. As a suggestion, if you have ever lubricated the oleo strut on your landing gear with a little bit of hydraulic fluid, it leaves a little bit of hydraulic fluid on the surface, of course, and you want to do that. But after several landings, particularly if you're off a grass strip like I am, you find that there has been picked up dust particles, dirt particles, whatever. So if you have lubricated your conduits, then the extended inner tube that Pete has addressed with crud is going to start collecting that on the rollout and the takeoff. So you're going to need to clean that off on a regular basis if you don't want to start collecting that crud inside and creating the problem that Pete had, I believe.
This is again my Comanche. That's the crudded up one. And this is what it should look like. That's the new one, actually, on my old Comanche. And then what Hank was talking about, these are some of the bolts that are in the main gear that you have to check out to make sure that they're in the right position. Otherwise they impact, like this one down here it shows, they touch the skin. And then when we walk down the line, as they referred, to look at the scissor joints, this one is in upside down. That flat down here, it should be the other way. Whoops.
Pete, I believe there were also some that had been modified so they would work.
Yep.
When all I had to do was flip them over.
Yes, this is correct up here. And this one also is correct. This one is backwards. And literally, you take it off, flip it the other way, and put it back on. That's all it takes.
Could I make a couple comments about a couple of gear stuck situations I've had that we haven't addressed?
Sure, go.
Okay, the first one was after a major rebuild on an airplane. Took off, did all the test flight stuff, and then I went to put the gear down. Circuit breaker blew. Actually, it didn't blow then. It blew when it went up. The discovery was that the shift boot, if you will, or the dust boot that's on the extension rod, If it's put on backwards, it has a metal cap in the forward end to keep the boot from tucking in, and you can crush that, and that will in fact lock the gear up and blow this breaker because it can't completely retract. I've had success in this case and tried to put it down, and the gear was so tight it wouldn't start motion. But I had success in this case by having the co-pilot hold the handle, the extension handle, and simultaneously I push the gear and reset the breaker, push the gear in the down position while pulling back on the airplane to create G-force. That broke the gear free and it extended. So that's one success without having. The second one is I've been in a plane that had a flat spot on the motor armature. The gear motor would not move, but if you open the access door to the gear transmission, you can take your finger and roll the brake. That's the little rubber coupling that the brake is on. You can roll that forward and move the motor. In this case, once the motor got off the flat spot, we were in gear, and down she went, no problem. In the worst case, in about 30 minutes of fingering that rubber thing forward, you can completely extend the gear. Believe it or not, your forefinger has enough torque to roll the gear down and never touch the emergency extension. Takes about 30 minutes and you will have a bloody finger. And yes, you need somebody to fly the airplane or to do that task for you. But in fact, your finger is strong enough to roll the gear down.
And I apologize. I totally forgot to put that in. It has been done a number of times, and it's real easy. If you want the gear down, you roll it forward like it's going down, and if you want the gear up, although that's going to be a lot worse, you roll it the other way.
Yeah, it's amazing how little torque the gear motor has to exert to do the gear, because literally you take your finger, you just start rolling forward on the coupling. Takes about 30 minutes, and you in fact can get a green light that way. And your gear is still locked with the transmission.
Question, now again, when you're rolling it forward, you're putting your finger down, putting the pressure against the roller and pulling up.
There's the gear.
Yeah.
So this is the coupling, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You're actually rolling it. You're correct. You're behind it. You're pulling up. Correct. You're rolling it forward. The rotation is toward the front.
Okay. Now, a couple other things that I noticed. I had a little bit of clearance problem with the red lever and the carpet. And as we have new carpets, new flooring put in our Comanches, you may end up with a little bit of interference issues. So you've really got to make sure that that red lever is forward and that the entire section of black rod pulls up so that you can roll it with your finger.
There is one thing I'd notice in that installation. There is no lift spring to pull the gear out of its indent when you release it. There should be a spring somewhere in there, usually right along the pilot side opening of the well.
Yeah, when we took off the floorboard, this is for the annual inspection. The spring went with the floorboard piece.
Okay, yeah.
So it was removed.
But Pete, do you want to just point at where that spring is? Because one of the things that we were taught to check, this is CJ again, is, and thanks Doug for calling that out, is that spring is in place because sometimes it just goes missing, and it's important, as Doug said. You want to go ahead and point to it?
It's somewhere in here.
Another question is, okay, 10 years ago, I put in the conduits that I bought from Matt Couric. Now, I forgot the exact scenario, but Matt said, well, I should have done item A before item B, and I really don't remember what that comment was, but if you're going to invest in the comments, not only in the conduits, not only do you want to purchase the parts, but you also want to double check with Matt as to what else needs to be done before or after that you put them in. And then the question is, okay, fine, my conduits are 10 years old. How much longer are they good for? So I have no answer for that, obviously, but.
Well, I'll throw in here something. I'm going to be 80 next year, and my airplane has been, was manufactured the same month I graduated from high school. And it's still on the original conduits, and we've had no problems.
The conduits that I had that failed were 47 years old.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, this is CJ again. The thought here is to try to have somebody knowledgeable check the function of your conduits. A lot of us are still on original conduits, but that is not necessarily a good thing. So what Doug mentioned about making sure that your timing is correct, the squat switch adjustment and the conduits, I think are three of the things that Hans Newbert and Matt Kirk really plan to talk about to get us all more knowledgeable about that and to help us get our A&Ps more knowledgeable. Unfortunately, the Maurice Taylor scholarships that he had bequeathed to train A&Ps got repurposed, and most of the gear out there is hydraulic rather than electromechanical. And just as we can't expect our instructors to be gods, our A&Ps are well-meaning, but they don't always have Comanche expertise. So we're starting to try to make the changes to make that knowledge more readily available.
There are a few shops, which I will not name, around the country that pretty much do things right. And they're the well-known ones. And of course, if you don't use one of those, Matt Kirk does sell manuals precisely for this kind of stuff that go far beyond what is written in the standard Comanche maintenance manual. You know, little tricks to make things easy, things to watch out for. But I have heard mechanics that I have trust in say that Piper instructions are good if you follow them to the exact letter. What happens is people say, well, oh, that's too much trouble to go back and make this other tiny adjustment. And that's where they get caught up in making bad things happen.
The other DVD to get, in addition to Matt Kirk's manual, as Hank just mentioned, is the 1,000-Hour Landing Gear AD DVD, which Hans Newbert did with another very knowledgeable gentleman. And Hans has agreed to make those available for $25, which includes shipping in the US. I'll post the snail mail address. If you send him a check, he will send you a DVD, or he will say to us, hey, you're sending too many people my way, and we'll help him send out the DVDs. But that DVD goes through the 1,000-Hour Gear AD, including not just how to measure everything, but how to get it back together. And so the manual Hans that Hank just mentioned and this DVD are both really, really helpful, and may save you many, many thousands of dollars for a small investment, not to mention many months down.
Basically, a great many Comanches, their last flight ends with a gear up. And I can't count the number of geared up Comanches I've seen parked on engine airports rotting away. Simply because the gear wasn't down when they landed. I don't know, does anybody have an idea of what it costs to fix a plane that's been on its belly? Probably just about what the plane's worth.
Yeah, I had to gear up.
About 90,000.
Yep. Cost me 85,000.
Yeah.
Repair
My 250, the estimate was 72,000.
If I could add something, Pete.
Sure.
I just posted in the chat window where folks can buy the Maurice Taylor pre-flight DVD from the Comanche Flyer Foundation. I believe they said it was $59 or something of that nature. Whenever we do a BFR, and remember I said I'm getting really old, so I've done a lot of BFRs. Some of the things we do to prepare for that is to go reread or rewatch the things that we've learned about Comanches in the past. And Maurice has some very nice tips on how to check your gear as to at least whether it looks right before you depart. It's not a substitute for having a good rigging check at annual, but it sure will go a long way towards pointing out major problems before you depart.
Thank you, Pat.
I like to give a little anecdote. When I bought my Comanche, I had a pre-purchase inspection, but it was obviously not very thorough. I found out that the person that originally bought my airplane in 1960, he geared it up in 1962, then he geared it up in 1963, and then he geared it up in 1964. He had 3 gear ups in 3 years before he sold the airplane. And my person who did my pre-purchase inspection didn't somehow catch that, and I chose the wrong person. But the bank that did the evaluation found it, and that was really news to me.
It just goes to show the pre-purchase agreement or pre-purchase inspection for a Comanche can't be done by somebody who isn't intimately familiar with Comanches.
But isn't it amazing that a person gears up an airplane 3 times in 3 years?
Well,
Get another hobby.
Since I'm getting old, I know what it's like to start getting forgetful. Just ask my wife.
Well, I definitely want to thank Hank for putting all this stuff together. This is a last minute deal. We did this in 2 days to put this all together. And, you know, Hank has done a great job of leading us through the discussion and finding stuff. We scratched here and there to find the stuff to be able to use. It worked out pretty good. But at this point, we're open for discussion.
I can tell you.
My name is Michael Cosby.
Go ahead, Mike.
My name is Michael Cosby. Okay, I'm on Las Vegas, Nevada. I've got a 62 250. But a number of years ago, I was having gear problems that wouldn't get a green light unless I cycled the gear a couple of times. We couldn't find the problem. It wouldn't reproduce itself on jacks. And so what I did is I designed a circuit and built a 3 green light panel, and worked with the local FESDO and a DER. And my airplane, I have three green lights, which are press to test for the gear down, and the old gear up amber light now is an in-transit light. It only comes on when the gear is in not down or not up. So with that, I was able to determine which gear was the problem gear, and we finally replaced the switches and whatever we had to do and solve the problem.
Amazing.
I might
It's under
have,
337. I'm sure it could be looked up somewhere.
I have a similar story with my other gear failure. We were coming back from Las Vegas, Nevada, and stopped in Dalhart, Texas. It was in the fall, but it was still pretty warm. And they had just started tearing up the ramp, so we had to go scranch around some gasoline. The hose from the across the torn up concrete by the normal fuel farm was just about 6 inches short of reaching our airplane. Anyway, we got fueled, got in the airplane, took off, the instrument flight plan again, and headed east. And I raised the gear and really didn't notice anything unusual except we kept the same old gear down climb. And I checked the lights and I said, Larry, who's my friend, the gear didn't come up.
You're going outside.
And he said,
I was trying to figure out the lights on the corner are motion detector lights.
Yeah.
But they were turned off. I don't know why we don't have them turned on.
Keep talking, Hank.
In the
so
hallway,
anyway, we fiddled around, cycled the gear several times, and
So I turned
nothing
them,
happened.
I turned them on, went out to look, and yeah, sure enough, they go out after a few minutes. So yeah, we might as well keep them. I don't know why they were off.
Someone's got an open mic.
So I just went out to check them. That's all.
Okay.
the one on the side, the on front of the garage, the right one.
Hey, Lonnie, you're talking. Your mic's not muted.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So anyway, he was also a mechanic besides being a pilot. And so we discussed it and decided to go on because fortunately we were going home and had to make a stop. And right dead center on our list, right at the mid center, was the final approach fix for the ILS into a little town in the middle of Kansas that happens to be the home of Webco. And I figured if anybody was going to have the parts on a Sunday or an early Monday morning, it was going to be Webco. We landed there, got down, went to the hotel because it was Sunday night. Right in the morning, I trotted out to the airport, moved the airplane over to them and stopped, and they came out and said, "What's the problem, Hank?" And I said, "The gear won't come up." And they said, "Oh, okay." And went straight, got the jacks, went straight to the, what's that switch for the gears? The gear that the pressure's off the gear.
This is a squat.
The squat, that's what I was trying to think of. The squat switch. They took it out, unhooked it, took it out, clicked a few times and got out the voltmeter to see if it was working, and it was working just fine. But that's the first thing that happens when a switch goes bad. It goes intermittent. So we changed it anyway. They had the part. And if you're going to have a problem with the gear, I can't think of a better one to have than a busted squat switch. The gear's down and locked.
Hello, this is
Hey,
John.
John.
Pepper. Yes.
Hi, John.
Hi, Pete. I have a 69 260C, and the green light used to be intermittent, and I see George Merriam is on, and I think he used to see that it was intermittent light, and we had raised it and lowered it a couple of times along the way on different occasions, and finally had, of course, been in touch with Matt Kirky at Comanche Gear, got a whole new wiring harness, and I have not seen an intermittent light since. So that was that. And I'd also like to throw out, I'm on supposedly the waiting list for Webco for their push-pull conduits. Has anybody heard anything about that? Last time I had talked to Philip there a year or so ago, he was not a very happy person about push-pulls and was waiting for them to come in. So I'd be curious about that. Thank you.
This is Robert Klein. Those of you on the session tonight that have things like iPhone as your name, please change it to something a little more descriptive. I'm the guy that does the tracking for the Wings credit, which is what's eligible for tonight. The last Wings credit we had 6 people having iPhone. So please change it to something recognizable so that I can correspond the log to your session so that you can get Wings credit. You can go to your individual session and click on the little 3 dots and rename yourself. And if you would please join using the email that you get from Pete, that's a big help when I put it together and send it to the FAA. Thank you.
Yeah, John, when I had some conduit problems before it had the lubrication, I spoke with Philip also, and what I got is that his conduits may never happen. It's been years, and I just have no confidence that it's going to happen. And as far as for Piper, it can take 6 months, is what I understand, for them to make it for an exorbitant price.
Do I understand that Matt Kirky has conduits as well?
I'm not familiar with Matt having conduits, so.
I have never heard that he had them. All I heard was that he would put them in.
We're coming up on 9 o'clock Eastern. I think at 9 o'clock, if we're still going, I'm going to stop the recording at that point. Here's a chance to get some questions in.
And anyone here, Ron Richmond? I don't know whether my microphone works or not.
It is.
I have a Comanche 400. I had a gear problem once in that I was trying to extend the gear when the aircraft speed was too high, and the twin doors on the Comanche nose gear interfered with the tire, and it caused it to blow the circuit switch. So I opened the door on the floor and released the pressure and dropped the gear away from the nose gear doors. And of course, with the reduced airspeed, everything went back to normal. And I was able, while I was flying, without having jacks, to re-engage the transmission to the gear and put it back up. So thinking about this after I got on the ground and all, I found that the spring loads that kept the nose gear up at too high an airspeed could be overcome if I put a pad of aluminum on the inside of the left nose gear door, so that the shimmy damper, as the gear tries to come down, the tip of the shimmy damper would hit that piece of aluminum that I had installed and force the nose gear doors open. So I no longer have to worry. I can lower the gear at any speed I want. And that little fix, that little short piece of aluminum, will cause the gear to come on down. So if you're not having a 400 with twin nose gear doors, you wouldn't worry about this problem, but I did, and I fixed it.
I have a further comment, and I got this from Larry Larkin many years ago. I do not, I'm not going to comment on twin Comanches or Comanche 400s because I don't know a thing about either one of them that anybody else would not know. The subject under discussion was the how to get down when you've got an emergency. And of course, for the single engine Comanche, it's pull the power all the way back, drop the gear, and bend it over to 150 miles an hour. There was another part to that, though, from Larry, and that is if you really got to get down, like you got a fire on board on something like that, you don't care about the gear doors. Just push it over and run it up to as fast, as fast as you're comfortable with. If you're on fire, you're not worried about the gear doors because that's the first thing that's going to go. And that's, there are rules, and for every rule, there's a time when it's okay to break it. Of course, you might have to pay the price and buy new gear doors, but you'll probably be very happy to need them.
What about a slip?
Well, we actually practiced at 150, and we were doing better than 6,000 feet a minute.
Okay, and don't forget to pull your RPM back. The further back you go, the less drag you have on the prop.
Right. But, and I'll tell you, when you looked out the front, you didn't see anything but dirt. You didn't see any sky at all.
The reason you bring your airspeed up is because you're trying to blow the fire out. How did that work?
Oh, the exercise would just see how fast you could get down. It was, we weren't on fire or anything like that. It was just a training exercise.
Yeah, that's what the reason for bringing the speed up. You want to get out of the airplane as quick as you can. You can either do it with gear up or gear down, but if you're trying to get out of that airplane real quick and you want to get closer to the ground, you can't beat 6,000 feet per minute.
Yeah, and 6,000 feet per minute, that's over a mile a minute. And believe me, those rocks and trees and stuff get real close real fast.
So you've accomplished your point. Now you got to find a place to land, and chances are it's going to be off airport. So you'll determine whether you want to gear up or gear down for that attempt.
Okay, guys, at this point, I'm going to stop the recording. It's been a great session. This recording will be available on the Comanche, northeastcomanche.org website, probably tomorrow later in the day. So you can go back and review whatever you want to review. But this will not end the Zoom. It's just end the recording.